So Syracuse lost to Clemson. It's a significant loss. It puts a damper on what was once a 4-0 start. But does that ruin the outlook on Syracuse football for the rest of 2023? I don't think so. And that's what we dive into today. What does the rest of the season look like now that they're 4-1? Now that they're not going to go undefeated? Now that they don't beat a Clemson squad? What does the rest of 2023 consist of? We've got that plus a little bit of UNC and how Clemson might have just exposed them to the recipe to beat Syracuse. It's your Locked On Syracuse Thursday episode. Let's get right after it.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome into your Locked On Syracuse Thursday episode. It's your boy OV saying thank you so much for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today and every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Sorry, I've been gone for a few days. You know, it gets in those swings and those busy weeks and those ebbs and flows, and we are in the thick of it right now. Thankfully, you know, maybe without a Locked On Syracuse episode, you got to be outside, enjoy this beautiful weather for the first week of October. I cannot believe how nice it is. Similarly, and this is a terrible segue, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, October is starting like Syracuse football season did. A beautiful start. Things going great. A 4-0 onset to the 2023 campaign, and then things started to fall apart a little bit last week for the first time in an extended capacity against Clemson. And we talked about that in our Locked On Syracuse Monday episode. You know, what went wrong in that game for Syracuse? It was penalties. It was mistakes. It was an O-line getting outworked and not necessarily outworked, but just outsized and we're better than you. All right. That's what it comes down to. But is the season over? I got a lot of people writing this team off now immediately following a loss. Does it stink to no longer be undefeated? Yeah. Did you lose to a Clemson team that's pretty damn good? Yes. So let's pump the brakes on calling the season over for Syracuse. Let's pump the brakes on saying that this can't be a successful year, because I've seen a lot of people, and maybe, you know, this is just things that I've seen, and I'm incorrect in saying this. I've seen a lot of people throw Syracuse football to the side after one loss. Let's think about the identity of Syracuse football for the last decade. Right? What have been the peaks? 2018, a 10-win season. A 6-0 start last year was a pretty high peak. The Camping World Bowl win is a pretty high peak. Beating Clemson in the Dome in 2017, a pretty high peak. I think it was maybe 3 straight seasons with a ranked victory against an opponent. That's pretty good, right? There have been some good moments. But this is still Syracuse football. It's not a perennial 10-win team. It's not a perennial 8-win team. It is a team and a program who right now, a success metric is a bowl game. And Syracuse lost a football game to a team that it isn't better than. Clemson, even at 2-2 when they came into the Dome, is a better football team than Syracuse. And that was pretty evident if you watched that game of football. If you watched the 22 men on the field at any point in time, it was pretty evident to me that Clemson was the better football team. And they lost that game. Oh, well. You got 2 more opportunities, and this is where I say let's pump the brakes especially. You have 2 more opportunities the next 2 weeks for an absolutely marquee win, a win that you remember for a couple of years, a win that looms large against a top 15 North Carolina opponent just a few days out. And then next week against a top 5 Florida State. You have 2 opportunities for one of those victories that looms large for a decade, even longer. That's the type of caliber these opposing teams are. You're playing against a top-tier NFL caliber would you say recruit? Why can't I think of the name? Prospect. There we go. A top-tier NFL prospect in Drake May. You're facing an incredibly difficult quarterback in Jordan Travis. teams that are incredibly well coached, teams that have depth, teams that are at their peaks right now. And Syracuse has put together a good start. Are they at their peak right now? I don't necessarily know. But I do know that you've got opportunities for big wins. And I've talked about this many, many times. The 5 games that you have to close out the season, really easy. If you told me to line up 5 ACC games, that's about as easy of a stretch that you can get in ACC football, right? Is anyone here to contest that? You've got Virginia, who hasn't won a football game. No, you don't have Virginia this year, excuse me. You have Pitt, who is 1-4, looks like they're struggling. You got Wake Forest, who is 3-1 overall, not terrible. You've got a Boston College squad that's 2-3, not really that good, right? You've got very, very winnable games in this stretch. Virginia Tech, who's 2-3, you're all right. Georgia Tech's in the mix there; they're okay. Right? It's very manageable. So the outlook for Syracuse right now is that they need to win some football games, but they have been winning football games, and everybody coming into the season pretty much chalked up an 0-3 stretch right here. You lose to Clemson, you lose to North Carolina, you lose to Florida State. But if you also looked at those same predictions, I think very warranted, all of those people still had Syracuse getting to 7 wins. Still had Syracuse, a little bit fewer, getting to 8 wins. Some even had them getting to 9 wins, saying they go undefeated outside of this 3-game stretch. The season outlook for Syracuse should not change based on what we saw against Clemson. You lost a game to a tough team. And right now you have opportunities for marquee wins as well as a pretty much cakewalk schedule to round out the 2023 regular season. Make some plays, win some games, support this team still. It's a 4-1 Syracuse football team, albeit the talent that they beat is not incredible. This is a team with 4 wins and 1 loss. It's a team 2 wins away from back-to-back bowl games. A team that we didn't expect to go 10-2 or 11-1 in the regular season. And maybe that's partially on me. Maybe that's partially on us getting a little overexcited, whatever it might be. Did the expectations change? That this team that everybody predicted to lose 2 at the very least of the next 3. Did this team that you predicted to lose 2 of these last 3, losing 1 of the 3, change your outlook that drastically? It shouldn't have. This is still a team that should and can go out and win 8 or more games, right? Let's remember that the 2018 team that we look back on so fondly lost a game to Clemson, in tougher fashion than they did this year, because that game was a lot more winnable than this one was. Let's not forget that 2018 team that won 10 football games lost 3 games. Syracuse can lose 3 games and be a 10-win team. Be that 10-3. Right? It was a 9-3 regular season for Syracuse, and they beat West Virginia in a bowl to get to double-digit wins. That's not out of the picture for the Orange right now. It's difficult, right? It makes it easier if you win a game in the next 2, although they're your toughest opponents of the year. But 9 wins, not out of the question. 10 wins is still very much in the question for Syracuse when you look at the schedule that remains. So the general outlook for Syracuse football, just to recap here, should not be panic. It should not be that this program is in shambles. You know, you can have your issues with this program. You guys know very well I do. But right now, a team whose success metric is a bowl game is on track to get to a bowl game and is on track to maybe get out of the bottom tier of bowls if they can win a few football games that they're supposed to win, that they, I assume, will be favored in Vegas. 8.5-point dogs, I believe, the last I looked, against North Carolina this weekend. Let's talk some UNC after a quick chat with our friends over at the eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED highlights or headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right. It is your Locked On Syracuse Thursday episode. We are talking Syracuse football. We talked the season outlook, right? How much should it change? You can be disappointed with the loss. No questions asked. You can be disappointed with the loss. But as we see this football team, as we see Syracuse football right now, the outlook should be pretty similar. It's not a team that you expect to beat the league's top, the league's best. It's a team that you'd like to occasionally beat the league's best with, sure. But it is not a team that we expect to go in and beat up on the league's best. And even at 2-2, now 3-2, Clemson is still one of the league's best in terms of talent, in terms of coaching, in terms of so many other facets. It is okay that you lost that football game. And as a fan, it is okay to be frustrated. But the past is the past. Let's look forward and let's take a look at what is next, right? Syracuse gets right back on track with a win this weekend. And here's the crazy part. If they lose this weekend, the last 12 minutes of the show that we just watched, we can cycle back to. Because the outlook on this season for Syracuse football doesn't change if they lose this game. It can change if the reasons they lose this game are catastrophic. But if they just lose this football game in the 1+ touchdown range that Vegas foresees, I don't necessarily know that the season outlook for Syracuse is changed and altered all that much. But let's talk about North Carolina. Let's talk about this squad a little bit, because this is a top 15 UNC team. It is a team that I talked a little bit about in our first segment, is led by an NFL-bound quarterback and an NFL almost ready quarterback in Drake May. He is one of the most watched guys in the league. He is one of the guys that is the most talked about because of the NFL potential. It's a tough squad, all right? It's a team that, we look at and we expected bigger things. We expected Tez to play for them. I saw an article that he probably could play if they make the college football playoff, or will play in their bowl game, as he will hit the eligibility minimum in terms of how long he's been at UNC. But it's a team that's good, and it is a team that has some solid points and an offense that is going to make you score points. And it is a team that Clemson showed the recipe to beat Syracuse last week. And UNC is coming off a bye week. UNC wasn't playing. And I was reading some articles from a lot of the reporters that cover the Tar Heels. UNC had some homework last week. And Mac Brown sent his players on Saturday to sit down and watch that noon ACC or ABC game between Syracuse and Clemson. It was like a homework assignment. It's like they're studying for a quiz. It's like they're preparing for a final exam. Said, here's what you need to look for. What do you see? And they watched that game. And what are the things that stand out the most? And this is something that I said on a Monday episode. This is something that I've seen a number of reporters that cover the Tar Heels mention as well. The trenches are what stood out. The constant pressure that Clemson was able to get on Garrett Schrader is what stood out to a lot of these people. And it is a thing that they now know, right? That's the crazy thing. When you're playing lesser opponents, when you're winning games, when you are, dominating many facets of the football game, you don't get exposed as much. When you get exposed, people watch, and that's the game film that they look at, and that is what they're looking at. I saw trenches being an issue, especially the Syracuse O-line, compared to a Clemson defensive line that had it outsized and outgritted and outworked a little bit and just is flat out better. I think North Carolina is in a similar boat. Their defense is not incredible, but they've got the size and the talent to exploit a Syracuse O-line that has shown, even in the games that we are sort of looking past because of the opponent, the Syracuse O-line has shown that it's not flawless, and it can be taken advantage of even against the likes of a Colgate or Purdue or an Army. And Clemson getting 5 sacks, a number of tackles for loss, being a presence in the backfield, holding Garrett Schrader, who was coming off of one of the strongest 4-game stretches in terms of Syracuse quarterbacks on the ground in the run game that we've seen in some time. Clemson held Schrader to, I believe, 25 yards on 15 carries. Obviously, sacks count as negative yards in there, which is a big contributor. But still, plus the fumble, right? Clemson was hitting Schrader. They were getting to him, and they were bringing that constant pressure. And in a situation where Syracuse is down receivers, right? No Oronde Gadsden. We don't know the Isaiah Jones situation. We don't know what's going on with Trevor Pena. We don't know if/when 2 of the 3 of them will be back. And the one we know the answer to, we know isn't playing this season in Oronde Gadsden. So you've got an O-line that's struggling and got exploited by Clemson last week that UNC is well aware of. You've got a solid, not an incredible defensive line for the Tar Heels, but a defense that can bring pressure and has some size and will be able to work some things. Plus, you've got receivers and your top receiving options, a couple of your top receiving options are out and not playing, at least we assume. It's a tough recipe to work with. It makes life difficult because we are now, Gadsden and Jones were 2 of the guys that, had experience with Schrader heading into this season. The rest of these guys, Amari Hatcher, Donovan Brown, a couple others, not as experienced, right? They're not as familiar with each other. And when the pressure comes and Schrader scrambles out or gets out to the side, that familiarity, that quick communication, that knowing each other's thoughts almost, those combos that you see so successfully in the NFL. It was, Mahomes and Hill for a while, Mahomes and Kelsey now. You look at, what was it? Doug Baldwin and Russell Wilson for a little while, right? You look at these duos with strong quarterback and strong receiver or tight end option that are so comfortable with each other. And I'm not sure that Syracuse has shown that recently because of the injuries, because of the constant cycling of who is the wide receiver options for the week. What else did they show? And this is the one that's incredibly alarming. UNC saw Syracuse's defense, albeit the best defense that UNC has seen statistically so far will be Syracuse. But they saw Syracuse get beat over the top a few times last week. And with a quarterback like Drake May, who we know is going to be an absolute menace and is going to get his fix and is going to be absolutely solid game in and game out the rest of the way for the Tar Heels. You don't think they're going to want to go deep? You don't think they are watching for those looks? You don't think they are taking a peek to see what is happening? Uh-oh. And look at this. Ready? Live insight. I said Tez Walker will be available to play. I am looking up North Carolina football right now, and Tez Walker's eligibility has changed. So how about this? After months of denial, I'm reading currently abc11.com. This is a quote from their article that just came out. After months of denials, the NCAA suddenly and unexpectedly changed its ruling and will allow UNC wide receiver Tez Walker to suit up and play for the Tar Heels. Let's see. That came. Does that mean he will be able to play against Syracuse? I would assume so. Walker's missed the first 4 games. He's expected to have a smooth transition into the game plan as soon as Saturday when the Tar Heels take on Syracuse. So, Tez Walker's back. Here's the live reaction. Tez Walker is back. That spread could shift immediately. Tez Walker is one of, if not the most sought-after receiver in the portal from last season. And right now, Syracuse is going to get, I would assume, a little bit of an angry Tez Walker, a little bit of a look at me, I'm back Tez Walker, a little bit of a, hey, NCAA, thanks, I'm back. You've ruined the first 4 weeks of what could have been a tremendous season. And he is back. And Drake May and the rest of the Carolina football team just watched Syracuse get beat long and over the top a number of times against Clemson, whose receivers, get this, are not as good as Tez Walker. That's what I can say right now is because we have a lot unfolding, and that changes the things a lot for this football game against North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Now the return game for Tez Walker. How about that? Doesn't the NCAA just hate Syracuse? Hold him off one more week. Come on. Do not bring him back for Syracuse. But we are going to have to see that happen. We are going to see, in front of a sold-out crowd, Tez Walker's long-awaited start to his North Carolina Tar Heels career. Yikes. That is scary. That is nerve-wracking, and that changes a lot about this game. You look at a Syracuse defense that, especially in the secondary, has dealt with some minor injuries. The big names are still there, but it seems like everyone's dealing with some tweaks and whatnot week in and week out. You're going to need to be incredible in this football game because UNC and Drake May and now Tez Walker are going to have some big time plays. They are going to put up some numbers offensively, and you are going to have to try and keep pace. Fortunately for Syracuse, UNC last couple of years has struggled against mobile quarterbacks. More so in like 2020 when Syracuse played them last, in 2021. Last year, a little bit better. But in the last few years, UNC has struggled against mobile quarterbacks. You look to Schrader, see what he can do in that regard. But my God, they are going to have to put some points up because I expect UNC to put some numbers up with that excitement, with that anticipation, and with that long-awaited return, right? The NCAA said he was not going to be eligible, denied the waiver, backtracks, gives it to him for Syracuse on Saturday. Yikes. And that is where we wrap the episode up today. If you got stuff that you think we need to add in here, please let me know. Tomorrow we'll have that true preview of Syracuse and UNC. Plus, ready for this one? Got a big interview that I'm hosting tomorrow that will air early next week that I think you guys will really, really enjoy. It should be getting some great info, and I hope you guys enjoy it when that does come out. I would assume Monday or Tuesday of next week. But until then, it's your boy OV. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today and every day. Still free and available wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I will see you tomorrow. Be kind, make somebody smile today, and just be a good person to wrap things all up.